We were joined by, we like this guy. We've had him a couple of times. He's on CBS Sports HQ. He's an analyst. He's a two-time Super Bowl champ, and he's the host of All Things Covered podcast, Bryant Mcfadden. No shortage of opinions. What's up, McFadden? How you doing, buddy?
Man, what's up, guys? It's a great day to be alive.
That's right.
It is, definitely. And your podcast mate just signed with the Vikings, which is kind of cool. You guys talk about that? What's that going to be like for him?
He's excited. He's excited. He kind of gave us a background story with him and Coach Zim. When he came out for the draft, I think Zim was with Cincinnati, and he said they kind of established a small relationship during that process. Granted, Cincinnati chose A.J. Green. Pat P went to Arizona. But he said that relationship and understanding and knowing how Coach Zim attacks offenses on the defense from the defensive side played a big part in his decision to sign with the Vikings.
Yeah, no, and it's already paying dividends as I see that Kirk Cousins is going to be on the podcast pretty soon. You know, let's start there because obviously it's your podcast mate's new team, and Kirk Cousins is such an interesting player in this draft. They had a big step back defensively last year, the Vikings did, and we know why. A lot of guys aged out, lost guys in free agency, got very, very young. Is Mike Zimmer, Coach Zimmer, who you were just talking about, is he like a little bit on a hot seat or a little bit warm or anything of that nature?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think when you look at their team last year in totality, clearly it was a disappointing year based on the expectations that many set for them coming into 2020. But like you said, they were dealing with a lot of adversity. I mean, they had so many injuries to key guys on all three levels defensively, and that's kind of hard to overcome. You know what I mean? When you look at the Vikings, when you look at their structure on the defensive side, in their glory years with Zim as the head coach, they were able to put pressure on the passers, on quarterbacks. You know, losing Hunter, he basically missed the entire year. They lost Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks missed time. They had a lot of key contributors that were not able to participate, and because of that, we saw an inconsistent defense. Now, those guys are all healthy with some of the additions that they made, especially with Pat P, and then probably make some more additions via draft. This team could be one of the more entertaining and consistent defenses that we will see this upcoming season.
Now, hang on a sec, Brian. I like Zim. I like Zim. He's a great football man. And I know that I like the way Tiki framed the question because he framed it respectfully, as you should, because he's not squarely on the hot seat by any stretch. But I think if the Vikings if they somehow go 7-9, I think Zim's out. I'm going to be more definitive.
Wow.
I'm telling you, I think there was a little discussion, or at least there was speculation, maybe not within the building, which is all that matters. I get that. But around the league, there was some smoke around Zim last year as the year went on. If they start off poorly, I think he's going to start really feeling the heat, like in a palpable manner. I'm not as sure about Zim coming back for the next year as maybe you guys are.
And I guess it depends on what happens. Now, if that scenario becomes a reality, 7-9, miss the playoffs, let's say they finish either third or fourth in their division, that's a big letdown. I think no one would knock them if they finish second in the division behind the Green Bay Packers, right?
Agreed. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
But anything behind two, like three, or definitely you can't finish fourth in that division. If you finish fourth in that division, I think that could be an issue.
Okay, so pretty much we are on the same page. Let's hit you with this here. We've talked so much about quarterbacks, obviously. Want to get your thought on Davonte Smith. You know, we saw him, you know, in the playoffs, that sick toe tap along the sideline. Every Saturday you watch him play. He's incredible. He checked in at 166 pounds, right? What do you think? How much weight can he add, functional weight, where his speed would not be diminished? I mean, 166 is 166. That works on Saturday. Sunday, it's big boy territory. I'm not saying he's not going to be terrific, but can you justify taking him 7th or 8th overall? What do you think of Smith as a pro?
I think he will be a successful professional football player, and the reason why I say that is because he is a football player. He should not be criticized for something that he just is. Being a light-weighted football player, that's just who he is. Now, I think he could probably get up to around 175 and still be effective. No more than 180. But he is a football player. That 166 that we know he weighs currently was what he was weighing throughout his collegiate career at Alabama, and all he did was make plays. I compare him to, like, Allen Iverson, an undersized player at his position, to say the least, but he plays with a big heart. His heart weighs more than he actually weighs, and I think that is the biggest asset that he has as a football player.
They say he's tough as hell and wiry strong.
That's one of the best comparisons we've ever had.
About this, guys.
I agree.
That was awesome.
If you watch Alabama, he was their number one gunner on punt team.
That's right. He was. He was tough, man. He did it all.
Okay.
Let's shift to the side of the ball that you're familiar with. By the way, my brother graduated high school at 175, played his entire college and NFL career under 180. And he's Hall of Fame level cornerback, played for 16 years. So size doesn't necessarily matter that much, especially because they've legislated out like contact for wide receivers. So I'm actually very confident that he'll be okay. Let's get to some of these corners that are coming out. I mean, we all know about Patrick Peterson down in Alabama, J.C. Horn as well, who I didn't realize for a long time that was Joe Horn's son. I was like, man, the kid's he's already in the league?
Get the cell phone.
I mean, what the heck is going on? I mean, Patrick Surtain, he's a big one. But the question really is our corner, like, can you draft a shutdown corner anymore? I know it used to be a vernacular back in my day, your day as well. Is that really a thing anymore?
It's not really a thing, because right now when you look at offenses and how the rules are definitely in offensive players in their favor, it's kind of hard. But I can tell you this much: you can draft a difference maker. Right?
Yes.
You can draft a difference maker, especially if you know how to utilize that said player. I think if you go back and look at some of the more well-known shutdown corners in their heyday, if you go back to Darrelle Revis, that 2009 season, I think it was, he was spectacular.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Rex Ryan had an ideal game plan for Darrell, and they were able to execute that, not to mention the individual skill set that he had in playing the cornerback position. And as long as these teams continue to draft these elite-like wide receivers, the DK Metcalfs of the world, Justin Jeffersons of the world, you better find a way to draft guys that can follow these guys and at least hinder them, to say the least. You know what I mean?
Doubt.
They gotta be able to play what I call that mother-in-law defense, that nagging defense, that's annoying style defense. You don't necessarily got to shut them down, but if you can play that nagging defense from time to time, I think most defensive coordinators would be okay with that.
I love the the play on words today is Bryant Mcfadden's bringing the A game. CBS Sports. I mean, that Iverson thing was great. CBS Sports HQ NFL analyst, two-time champ. He's got the podcast, all things covered. Speaking of corners, I feel like this young man does not get enough run in terms of, like the pundits. You don't really hear his name a ton on TV. But Greg Newsome, I know, Tiki, you saw him in person.
Yes.
With Northwestern.
Yep.
What do you see on tape? And, to me, he's a top 20. I think he's going to be drafted top 20. What do you see on film, Bryant?
Oh, man, I love Greg Newsome. Greg Newsome is a football player. The thing I love about Northwestern, if you look at their defense, they're well coached on all three levels. And watch Greg last year against Ohio State. I mean, he's a corner that's well put together. He competes well. He loves to tackle. He's a tough-minded kid, and I think when you look at these young corners being successful early in their career, they got to be mentally tough. He's a tough-minded kid, and I'm right there with you. It wouldn't surprise me if Greg got drafted before Caleb Farley, and I'm only saying that because of the injury concerns.
I agree with you.
Caleb.
Yep.
Yeah.
Back surgery.
Now, Caleb's ceiling is extremely high, but that back issue may scare some teams away. I'm hearing that he's healthy, but you guys know how it is with some organizations. Anytime they hear some type of injury concern, it might shy them away from taking that player higher than what they would have done before the injury. So it wouldn't surprise me if that happens, but, I love Greg Newsome. He's a heck of a ball player.
Yeah,
Nice.
Farley's a big kid, 6'2", 207, 210 or so. He runs a 4.45 too, so he's got talent. There's no doubt about that. You mentioned something about the injury and not really the injuries, the question marks around some of these kids. And we all know that a lot of these guys opted out, man. Gregory Rousseau opted out. Jamar Chase opted out.
Parsons
opted out. Farley opted out. You think that's going to affect them on draft day? Because there's not a lot of data, right? There's the conversations you've had maybe with them. You see them with their underwear on, but there's not a lot of like on-field data. You think that hurt some of these kids this season?
It could hurt some. I had an opportunity of having Gregory Rousseau on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I asked him, why did he decide to opt out? Because he's not as refined as some of the other pass rushers that probably will hear their name called in the first 2 rounds, to say the least. So he definitely needed an extra year of film, and being able to get more comfortable in his position, because he played wide receiver in high school. But he had a legit story in why he decided to opt out. His mom was a nurse. She was on the front line. He was seeing everything that was happening before we all saw it in the public. So that really hit home for him. And I understand that. And you have to respect that. I think that the biggest decision for these teams, when you look at some players like a Gregory Rousseau, who might not have as much hot tape as some of the other guys that we will see get their name called that rush the passer, can they develop these guys?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you this much. Gregory Rousseau only played 1 year on the D-line for Miami, didn't start until after week 6, and had 15.5 sacks.
Oh, he was a beast.
So there's something there, right? There's something there. And because of that, there's going to be a team that's going to roll a dice and feel like, you know what, if this guy got 15.5 sacks, not knowing how to rush the passer, what can he provide to us if we actually teach him and develop him the right way?
It's a great point. Yeah. It's a great point, Brian. Look, we had a little it was a fun conversation. Tom Brady hates the number change. I know you wore 8, right? And then at FSU, then 20 and 25 in the NFL. If you could, would you have worn a single digit?
It depends on if I was already established in the National Football League and I was making plays in my new number, in my double-digit number, I'm not going back. But if I was kind of, let's say the previous year or so, I was kind of a bit inconsistent, and now I can go back to my college number. Of course, when I was balling, to be able to get drafted, you had to be balling pretty well on the collegiate field. I probably would go back, but it depends on where I am, because I also heard, guys, for these guys to be able to make that jersey switch, they have to buy out all their current jerseys.
That's what Tiki was saying.
That's a lot of money you're going to have to spend just to go back to your college number.
Yeah,
that's what Tiki was saying.
Unless you've been broke off already. Alvin Kamara can do it, right? Because he already got his contract. Some of these other kids, that's not worth it.
So we're talking to Bryant Mcfadden, CBS Sports HQ NFL analyst, 2-time Super Bowl champ with the Steelers. So let us get your thoughts on this. Let's take Trevor Lawrence. Forget he's going first. Forget about him. Let's take Mac Jones, who is thought to be the most ready, most polished, most risk-averse, if you will. Put him aside for a moment as well. And let's even put Trey Lance to the side, because we haven't seen him play a ton. He only played one game last year in terms of with the one game they got on the schedule there. I know they're playing now, but the one game that we saw. So between Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, when you put on the tape, watching that tape from the eyes of a defensive back, of those two players, who do you think you could lure into more mistakes?
Zach Wilson. The reason why I say Zach Wilson, the competition is not the same that Justin Fields played against.
Yeah.
Zach Wilson, if you go back and watch his BYU tape, not last year, but the year before that, or the year before that, he struggled. And I can tell you this much, if Zach Wilson opted out last year, Zach Wilson probably wouldn't have gotten drafted until probably round 5 or 6.
Yeah. Because
his tape was so inconsistent in 19 and 18. But if you look at 2020, he balled out. He took advantage of the opportunity. Justin Fields played against better competition. Justin Fields, week in and week out, he was the guy that everyone was hunting. You know what I mean? Because he was the big fish in the sea. He was the ultimate animal in the jungle. So he understood what it takes to play under the brightest lights in the biggest moments. So me personally, I got to go with the guy who hasn't seen a lot of top-tier college defenses, and I think I would have more success against him. That's just my personal opinion. You know what I mean? Some guys may say otherwise, but if you're talking about a kid in Justin Fields who's been playing at Ohio State, who's gotten better, and he's balled out on some of the biggest stages in a consistent effort, I go the opposite direction, and I choose Zach Wilson to answer your question.
I got you. Now, listen, I think it's almost blasphemous that Mac Jones is being thrown around as getting drafted before Justin Fields. I think that's ridiculous.
It's about fit, man.
Wait a minute.
That's about fit.
I don't agree with you.
You don't agree?
I'll let you finish.
Okay.
I'll let you finish.
Okay.
I'm more in your camp, Bryant, by the way.
All right.
Because I watched them play
basically,
a lot.
the players who know what they're watching basically see one thing and I see something else. So okay, we disagree on this, but I also disagree. As much as I like Fields over Mac Jones, I like Wilson over Fields. And the thing that I keep hearing a lot is, man, every time Zach Wilson played against a decent team, he didn't really put up good numbers. Okay, hey, how many of those guys that are trying to get off the line of scrimmage for BYU are playing on Sunday? How many guys try to block those? He only played a few good teams, I get it, but they were completely overmatched. So what would he do against those good teams?
By the way, just one, Dax Milne, that's it. Nobody else is playing on Sundays.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? But think about that. How's he supposed to play well against good teams? He's got nobody around him.
But see, that's the thing. The most important position on the football field is the quarterback. And if you're that type of guy that should be drafted top 3, top 2, you make everybody better when you're playing against better talent.
But Brian, hold on. Brian, Josh Allen didn't do that against Iowa. Josh Allen didn't do that against Oregon when he was playing over at Wyoming. That's not necessarily true. Josh Allen's a superstar, and he got his head handed to him against Oregon on CBS Sports Network and against Iowa on the Big Ten Network. I watched both games. He played terribly.
He played, no question, he played terribly. But my argument for Zach Wilson, go look at 2019 when he played against like talent. Go look at 2018 when he played against like talent. Mm-hmm. He struggled.
Yeah.
By the way,
even if you go watch the game this past year, BYU against Coastal Carolina,
there were
some ups and downs.
Yeah, lots of them. By the way,
and how many players will get drafted from Coastal Carolina this year?
And they got a good baseball team. They won the national championship a couple of years ago. Take it easy, McFadden.
By the way, you might just be underselling Josh Allen's work ethic and the structure that they built around him. He's the anomaly.
I'm not. I know what the Bills have done. I'm just saying we're getting college.
Josh Allen should be playing on Game of Thrones. I mean, he walked his measurables and the athleticism. I mean, he's 6'5", 6'6", probably like 250, and he can run.
He runs like Lamar.
Some of the things he might lack from the skill set. It's his athleticism and the size. It makes up for the things that he may lack when it comes to being a pure throwing quarterback.
Yeah, Bryant. Last question here, 30 seconds. Mike Tomlin's extension. You like this? Obviously you have ultimate respect for him because you won some championships down there in Pittsburgh. But what do you think about his extension?
I'm okay with it. I mean, the man has never had a losing season. Unfortunately for Mike Tomlin, he's coaching for a franchise that has so much tradition, the fans are spoiled. That's what it is. Like, right now, think about organizations like the Jets, right? They would love to have a Mike Tomlin as their head coach. Heck, the Jets would love to have a head coach that can give them 7 and 9 consecutive seasons. But when you're coaching for the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you don't get to an AFC championship game, if you don't go deep in the playoffs, they're mad at you. They're going to get drunk, and they're going to be calling for your head the next season. Personally, that's what's going to happen. And when we used to lose in Pittsburgh, everybody get drunk. Nobody's going to work on Monday. Nobody's going to the school on Monday. Everybody's mad at everybody. Yeah. But that's a spoiled fan base, deserving so, because they have so many sticky Lombardis that show why they should be spoiled. But I'm okay with it. The man's never had a losing season, right? There was only a few amount of coaches, I can't remember the number, that has never had the type of success he's having currently. Yep. Yes, an extension is warranted.
Agreed. Yep. Brian, great spot. I think. Listen, you've been good before. I think this was your best spot with us. Outstanding, man. Really on the money today, bro.
I can say this much. Y'all need to have me back on before the draft because you said something about Mac Jones.
We'll get back to it.
Got my ears up like a little dog.
All right,
my ears are up like a little dog right now.
Hey,
all right,
Brian. Thursday.
You got it.
Clear your schedule for next Thursday. You're in.
Deal.
Yeah, because my ears are up right now.
We'll get you back in. Well, I see the ears. He's getting ready to pounce. I understand where you're coming from. We'll get you back on next week for sure. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Right.
That was outstanding.
He was money the first time we had him.
No, I know, but I feel
like
he's
raw, but now he's like polished and
yeah.
he's on the money.
Well, he's coming with material now.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's a more polished act. Like he's been on stage for a while.
That's what happens when you do podcasts. Like he does it every. I guess I don't know how often they film, but they tape. But they do some pretty good interviews.
I know they do. That's
Patrick Peterson.
Yep, Patrick Peterson. That's the All Things Covered podcast. Bryant Mcfadden, CBS Sports HQ NFL analyst. Samter, book him next week. It's done. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.